from the Crypt.
Woo! What is up, freaks? Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt. It's your boy Marty. Back in the studio drinking bullet bourbon again tonight. Chugging. It's because we're about to dive into a very deep conversation. I'm very excited for tonight's guest, an Anon. If you're into crypto Twitter, you definitely may know him. He's definitely come across your feed at some point. I'd like to introduce you all to Coinyeezy. Coinyeezy, welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on, dude.
Thank you. Happy to be here. Made the trip.
It's not often that we get Anons on the pod. I'm excited. I'm excited about this. I'm excited about the aurora around your Twitter account and specifically what you guys are doing with Honeyminer right now. First, before we dive into any of that, typical of the show, how did you get into Bitcoin?
Oh, right into it.
Yeah.
So it's a good story, I think. I heard about Bitcoin in let's say 2012. So early enough, but not as early as some of the real OGs. But I heard about it at a college party. I went to Purdue University, was hanging out with some buddies. And just by happenstance, a friend of mine, actually his brother, who was a bit older, had started a Bitcoin betting site. Not a very big one, but there wasn't many.
Betting site, not the least.
Yeah, which was like really the first primitive of user interfaces for Bitcoin, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of how I described that, and some of the early economic stimulation around it was sports betting. So he created a sports betting site, and he had a lighter or a cup or something at the party where it said the name of the website, and I said, what the heck is this? What's a Bitcoin? And long story short, I got the quick fill in, definitely tabbed that browser on Wikipedia and went home and read about it. And about 24 hours later, I was like, oh, this is PayPal with computers. And I'd been scammed on PayPal before selling, I think it was a camera to somebody in Russia, classic, chargeback. And I said, wow, with Bitcoin, this won't happen. And more or less, that was it. Like, it was that simple for me. I knew that it had a promising future simply because it was an internet payment system and it had some advantages compared to a credit card.
How early or late in your college career was this?
I think I was a sophomore.
Yeah.
So I was pretty young. I was a young buck. I just started my first business, real business, let's call it, making websites, doing video, photo, digital marketing, kind of what led into some of the stuff I'm doing now with software. So I was pretty young and didn't have a lot of money, but I think Bitcoin's price around them is like between like $40 and $100. I remember roughly.
Yeah. And what was your journey through the rabbit hole? How did it start? You got into it through betting. Were you sort of an economics or a money nut before then? Were you studying computer science or design?
I studied, believe it or not, I studied rhetoric. So I have a little bit more of a philosophy background. My early goals in life were to start an advertising agency, which I kind of did more or less through the website company. And like I said, I recognized that it was cool. Bitcoin, what is this? I had no real idea at the time, that early, like what's the gravity, the effect that Bitcoin could have on the world. But I just started reading into it, and I read, and eventually a couple of my buddies who also learned about it the same night were like, hey, we're running this company together. We got a little bit of cash. We're making websites. Let's do some investing. It was really my first play into investing. I had some courses in college. I took business courses along with my rhetoric background. So I had this nice generalist already going. I did some coding. I had some design. I had some philosophy. I had a little bit of economics. And it just kind of all pulled together with Bitcoin. I mean, you got this computer science, you got philosophy, and you have economics. And it's a beautiful combination of those things. And it hit me.
How long did it take to hit you? Like, was it immediate or?
I would say within a week or two. We more or less, like me and that kind of like ground zero group of friends were like, oh yeah, this is cool. And I started slowly but surely getting more and more involved, learn more, and not like just purely investing. Like I started taking that time I had free when I was running the business. At the time, actually, my business partners were still in school, and I was kind of like couch surfing, running the office out of this house we rented. And I was spending any extra hour reading about Bitcoin. Or like Reddit Bitcoin was just really starting to grow too, So you had Bitcoin talk and the forums, and you had Reddit. And Twitter wasn't really a thing. Like it was, but it wasn't. You know, I followed some people, but it wasn't what it was today. Reddit was like, that was the rabbit hole.
That was where it was at.
That was the rabbit hole, for sure.
No, it's crazy how I love that you had that combination of sort of classes and courses to sort of come to this well-rounded understanding. Because I think I actually had a similar path. So I studied economics. All my electives I spent on philosophy classes, and then I quit finance to learn about UX design and like software development. And
nice.
I think for people with that sort of background, generalist background, like you said, it is a bit more innate, like understanding this. I feel like the learning curve is a little less steep than maybe for other more hyper-focused people.
Definitely. And even at the time, you know, build a few e-commerce sites. We weren't really doing a lot of like international business or something, but you realize there were like constraints, and the businesses we had to sign up for these accounts and stuff. They were affected by the fact that like you couldn't do business in certain countries and stuff. And it was really easy to see. And I played out to luck a lot, because it was just kind of all of these connections in life that happened at once. And I was able to have this realization, and it was something special like Bitcoin. And here we are.
Yeah. So when we met the first time a couple weeks ago, you said you've been in the mining game for a while. So a precursor to Honeyminer, you've been mining for quite a while, correct?
Yeah. So going right off of, you know, I learned about Bitcoin, got into Bitcoin, was running some businesses, and I really quickly started understanding what mining meant, and even had at that point really dove into, got invited to some stuff to talk about Bitcoin. Did some like business forums, a bunch of old guys, kind of like Rotary clubs, and was talking about Bitcoin. Didn't really know what I was talking about, but you know, people were interested in how it worked, and I had to figure out what mining was. So I just kept diving in and going deeper, and I ended up learning about Litecoin. And I think there was like, you know, at this point there were like Litecoin, Feathercoin, Namecoin, Purecoin. Purecoin's a classic. I don't know why that always stuck with me. It was like, you know, there's like Crypt, it was back then, and BTCE had all this stuff.
Yeah, and then Vercoin was not too long after.
Yeah.
They're, those multi-algo coins have stuck around.
Yep.
They got hot.
I said, okay, you know, like, and I remember we had like interns in our office, and younger, a little bit younger. I mean, we were young, but some were older, some were younger. It was kind of a funny dynamic. And I remember bringing this up in front of some of my buddies there, and the intern was like, what the heck, like Bitcoin mining, you can't do that anymore. And I mean, this was like 2013, which is hilarious, because you definitely could. You just need to know how. And I was like, I don't know. And really quickly started researching and how to like take a GPU. And I didn't even know that much about that even at this point. And got with my buddy, and we set up a little like 6-card GPU miner. And we were mining, I think, Litecoin and like Dogecoin maybe. And that was it. Like I went from 0 to 100 literally, because I didn't really know a lot about computer engineering. I had a nice MacBook that I could design cool stuff on, or help make a website or send emails. It was a browsing machine. And we kind of pushed it to the next level and started to get to that point. So the mining thing was funny. It was kind of by accident, and I ended up being really lucky, because we started mining like things like Litecoin really early.
Well, you are the second recorded Dogecoin miner to be on Tales from the Crypt. Congratulations, behind Nick Carter, who destroyed a laptop doing it.
Yeah, I think I got like wrecked from some of this, at least to some degree. It was like, I don't remember Crypt and like this Big Vern,
yeah,
dude.
Big Vern, Big Vern exits.
Such a classic. I can't even like help from laughing. And we like, you know, I don't know if this guy, I don't even know the story, but apparently like he exit scammed, or like the website went down or whatever. And I'm pretty sure a lot of our mining profits were chilling on that exchange. So classic newbie.
It happens.
Leaving stuff on
I got
exchange.
scammed on MinPal. I got that hurt. That was a hard early lesson. But I think it's funny what you said. Like, you had no idea what it was like to mine or anything about computer science, but you just big fan of baptism by fire here.
Yeah.
You just jumped in. Maybe let's dive into like what it was like learning something new, and like what heuristics are you using or steps are you following to learn this new thing?
And I hung out with a lot of engineers. Purdue is a huge engineering school, and I was kind of the oddball because I wasn't one. And I was really lucky because my friends were engineers, and the friend that I set this up with, you know, he more or less did the work. Like, I was kind of like had the idea, and I was like, hey man, you ever heard of Bitcoin? You know? And we had some computer or graphics cards and some computer parts, and then we went on eBay and Craigslist. And at the time I was like basically broke. Business was doing okay, but I needed some side cash. So I had this little side business of doing stuff like buying and selling on Craigslist, you know, things like that. I was kind of like hustling all the way up. And so I didn't know how to quickly get and source hardware. And I was on a college campus, so you could do that. And there's a lot of gamers. It's a pretty nerdy place. Kind of the city of cargo shorts is what I call West Lafayette, Indiana.
Isn't it true that I went to college in Chicago, so there was a lot of Big Ten schools like in my area, and Purdue had a notorious reputation for being heavily skewed towards the male population.
Absolutely. I think we had like 70% male. And, you know, in reality, it felt like 90 walking down the street. You know, the large proportion of the population there are just really smart people, but they're in math, they're in computer science, they're in engineering. And, you know, that's a really, really tough curriculum. So people are caught up in the basements. And it's a funny place to be because you kind of like overlap, and it's a college town. There's fun and there's football games and all tailgating, and you get to do all that cool stuff. But like Purdue is pretty special, and the fact that like it had so many smart people.
Extremely academic, is
definitely
at the end of the day as well.
Definitely,
it's interesting. I didn't know it was that rigorous.
It's tough. My brother's actually going through grad school there now, and it's a great school. Anybody who's listening, like Purdue's, you know, it's kind of a boring town maybe compared to some of these other Big Ten cities. But it's a place definitely dear to me. I love it.
And there's our free out of the pod for Purdue University. Check it out. If you're ever
didn't expect that one coming. Not even myself.
So you're mining. You've learned a lot. You're a project hustler. So let's dive into your projects you've worked on in crypto in particular. And it seems like it's been a very iterative process for you. You're hopping around from like different. You have like a portfolio app, Honeyminer, Pepe Dap.
Whale reports
too. So you have like content, that's data app, portfolio app, a mining operation, and
digital collectibles, right?
Digital collectible app, yeah.
And before that, even I had started to get a little bit more skin in the game when I had this bright idea to help. I learned about ransomware, and so this is before CoinDex or any of this stuff. I'd figured out that people got hacked for Bitcoin. The news this is a pretty old thing. People think it's kind of new, but it's like been going on since like 2010. That ransomware has been happening. Yeah, I caught onto that, and I was kind of like the local consultant to help resolve ransomware. So what I would do is if like, you know, I'm not going to say what companies, but occasionally a mid or large size company would get hacked. Like e-commerce was really common. What I saw, people would get their databases locked up. Call me. These are 40, 50-year-old men, IT experts, smart guys, sometimes with like tears in their eyes saying, you got to help me figure this out. And I'd basically teach them how to like go to Coinbase or whatever and kind of resolve the ransomware, which is actually really simple, but they didn't know what Bitcoin was, and it was very scary, right?
Early iterations of Heartbleed or something. Is that what it was? Heartbleed?
I don't know.
The one that took over the hospitals in Europe.
Oh, yeah.
What was that called?
Yeah. I mean, this stuff is only the beginning even, right? Even in 2018. Kind of wild, but this is definitely the future of how you do cyber hacks, you know, attacks and
all right, so let's talk about that a little bit. Like, how do you see this progressing? Like, that's like, I mean, that's a big theme in crypto and Bitcoin in general is these technologies built on top of encryption, using encryption are going to make it extremely glaringly obvious the attack vectors that exist in our current world. There may be a lot of 0 days and a lot of technology that's out there, and how do we sort of protect ourselves from these increasing ransomware attacks that you're describing?
Yeah, well, I like I said, I kind of got into it where it's still pretty early enough and caught people by surprise. Now I think there's a lot of companies that are actually pretty proactive and have at least recognized this, especially big ones, right? But data is like, every time a company holds your data, it's like a really high entropy environment. There's a lot of human capital costs associated with protecting the data. There's a lot of human capital just to run the company. I mean, it's an expense just to be able to sell a product, right? Massive. And to protect the data up until these things like ransomware was kind of like hindsight, like, oh, we'll do this later. And they didn't really see it coming, and it was more like reactive instead of proactive.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw that evolution really early, and I think that nowadays you're looking at things that are like at a much higher threat level. So it's not e-commerce sites. Yes, it will be e-commerce sites, but it'll be things much bigger because Bitcoin in itself has grown, and that environment has been recognized. But it's proven itself as like the best way to do these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
For hackers, unfortunately. But it is kind of like the Darwinism that is Bitcoin, and it's attacking these systems. People are attacking these systems despite Bitcoin existing or not. And Bitcoin now is that place where they can actually capture the value. So I think that in the future, we're going to see a lot more crazy stuff. And I don't want to go into like doomsday scenarios, but you're talking about things like with your energy grid, which is a huge cost to American
Let's
population.
go into it.
That's right.
Let's go into it. Let's go to energy grid
Dude,
scenario.
energy grids getting wrecked, airplanes, all this stuff that you don't want to think about. And I travel a lot, and I would like not to think about this. But the fact is, all of this stuff is running, submarines, nuclear subs. These are running on like Windows XP.
Cobalt sometimes.
Wrecked.
Right?
These are going to get wrecked. I mean, these are operating systems that are notorious for having 0-day exploits. Like the NSA and Windows, one and the same might as well be, because the core, like the root level, is designed around these requests by the government to get data. So wrecked. So like you could basically end the story there and say literally everything that exists right now has some kind of 0-day exploit, and Bitcoin will be the way these ransomwares. It's not Bitcoin's fault. It's definitely something. It's further. It's like how these products were designed and security in mind was not a thing.
Yeah, and that's sort of what our boy Andrew DeSantis focuses on. Because of this, he thinks Bitcoin will only be successful in the future if we can sort of not even reverse course on these 0 days, just start new and start building hardware and firmware that is secure at its root, and it's cryptographically proven that it is so. And that's a very, very intriguing endeavor, and it's like I think it follows the ethos of do it right or don't do it at all.
Yeah,
very, very much at its core.
And I mean, shout out to Andrew DeSantis, because he's one of the few people, even 2-3 years ago, that was talking about some of these problems and how Bitcoin can help kind of salvage this situation.
Yeah,
and it pushed me to think more about this, right? Because I kind of had that with the ransomware stuff and all of that. You can add it up, right? And the beautiful thing about like Bitcoin is that Darwinism we talk about, is that it puts pressure on these things to like actually make a change. And so now I'm a big proponent of let's not look at Bitcoin as money. We can, sure, it can be money. It can be a lot of things. One thing it definitely could be, and it could be really successful at, is a place like for computation, a sound place that you can compute. You could derive operating systems, start up your computer, type in your private key, and that puppy's like, it's all Bitcoin based, let's say, right? To keep it simple. And that stuff I'm a big proponent of. I'm very fascinated with that. I've been learning more and more about that as much as I can, coming from like a non-science background, right?
Yeah, and I've dove down that rabbit hole as well, and I guess I would imagine I'm more ignorant to it than you are. But like, what are the biggest obstacles that Bitcoin being utilized in that fashion needs to sort of overcome? I'd
say intellectual and human capital is like number one, because there are only so many people. Like, listeners, please follow DeSantis, Mark Wilcox. You can say these guys are like doomsdayers or whatever, but you should follow them just for the kind of like intellectual bits you can gather from them, because they're really, really focusing on these things, right? Mm-hmm. And it's a high risk environment, and right now there's not a lot of people trying to solve these types of problems, and Bitcoin happens to be like the mecca of security. It's secure by design. So it's, to me, at least from like a visionary standpoint, that's the place we should be putting a lot of effort, is figuring out how to derive software, how to compute. How you could send a transaction. I'll send a transaction, Coinyeezy, to Marty, and that transaction can contain data. It can contain. It could even contain files. It can contain a way to, when you receive that transaction, you could now like open up a file on your computer, and only you and I can share that. That stuff's possible with Bitcoin, and a lot of the kind of newcomers that came into the space in the last 2 years, they just haven't really met this. Like, Bitcoin is kind of like this onion, and there's layers, and they haven't really.
A lot of layers.
They really haven't gotten there.
There's a lot of intellectual rabbit holes you can jump down. Like there's
so it takes time,
right?
And that's not anybody's fault. That's just what it is. And so part of the stuff I even do on Twitter is like, I'm not really trying to like push thoughts down people's brains or whatever throats and say this is what's going to happen. I'm just trying to have people be more proactive.
Expand the framing.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's like Bitcoin Cash. What the hell? This is short. You're thinking very short term. You know, if you're looking at Bitcoin as a computational environment, Bitcoin Cash, who cares? I mean, these are derivatives of each other. Bitcoin Cash does have an advantage in some sense that it allows like bigger blocks. And if you can imagine something people don't really catch on to is that hardware is going to progress. The way we store data will progress. Look at things like Near-Yad storage. I'll show you after the show this cool video. And
I've seen it.
Yeah, great. So like, you know, they're doing stuff with GPUs now that allow you to pass data.
They have like these crazy 3D animation going. The dude's just ripping the GPUs out.
Oh, I just showed that video like right before I rolled in the studio. Yeah. So with the Honeyminer guys. But you know, to stay on track, it's like all of this stuff is kind of going on. And if you think that Bitcoin today or Bitcoin Cash today is what it will be in the future, you're being silly. All derivatives of Bitcoin, all opportunities that Bitcoin or a fork of Bitcoin can have will happen. Mm-hmm. And that's what we should invite. And that's going to help drive human capital. It's going to help invent new things. It's going to help solve some of these problems we're talking about with like security and data storage and doing computing on Bitcoin. So I try to like say, hey guys, you know, we don't need to be Bitcoin maximalists. We don't need to hate Ethereum. We don't need to hate Bitcoin Cash. That's all just a brand. Mm-hmm. And Bitcoin and all derivatives of Bitcoin, they're our friends. And we should invite them to be at our party. And we should really, really try to learn about what they're trying to do. And we should listen to these people, even if they're crazy assholes. You know, your Roger Vers and your Craig fake Toshi or whatever, right? Who cares? Just try to learn more and use that as an opportunity to kind of absorb and sponge these things that they're talking about, because it's not all wrong, right? Like there are opportunities in some of these other features.
I'd agree to an extent. Like, I think these people should be heard to a certain point until, I would argue, like a lot of the points these people are trying to make have been proven, like, just illogical in my mind.
Just to clarify.
Definitely hear them
definitely agree, right?
But it should hit a threshold where it's like, all right, this idea is stupid. Let's move on. And
yes, but, you know, even maybe I can even be more precise and say, if your friend says this person sucks, you know, on Twitter, you shouldn't take your friend's word for it. Just go find out.
Yeah.
That's probably your easiest solution. And I'm not suggesting that everybody there is doing the right thing.
Same should be said with the opposite. Like if your friend's saying this person's awesome, definitely don't take that with a grain of salt.
Everything should be, you know, you should be skeptical about everything. I had the chance to see Edward Snowden talk in Blockstack Berlin, not in real life, but on a video. Mm-hmm. And it was amazing to hear him speak, because he was, you know, obviously he's talking about security and things like 0 days and NSA and his last line was, don't trust me, you know, be skeptical. That's all I'm trying to promote.
Yeah.
I think it's a similar message that I try to like dial in, is like, be skeptical, but don't be crazy and try to learn. That's the best way for everybody.
Exactly. And the best way to learn is to push your boundaries of what you think is possible.
Definitely. And maybe lose a little sleep.
Yeah.
A lot of sleep.
Yeah. I've lost a lot of sleep. I've been sleeping well recently, though. I will say that.
Yeah, the bull's coming back. You know, the price is going back up. Everyone's sleeping good now.
I don't know. Could be a bull trap. Been looking at volume. I don't know if volume's there yet.
Yeah, we don't have to talk price, right? I'm not the trader.
Nah, we don't need to. It's nothing. Let's talk Bitcoin and just philosophy behind it. All right, let's pivot to Honeyminer for a little bit here, and then we'll get trippy again a little bit.
Sure.
Let's get the business side of it, or not even the business side of it. I want to learn about Honeyminer. Yeah. You are co-founder?
Yeah, so I'm technically a first hire.
First hire.
Honeyminer. Yeah. So the founders, the core group of founders, had this idea probably 2 or 3 years ago, and started putting it into movement a year ago, and we just released the first version of Honeyminer about 3 months ago. So it's been moving along pretty nice, and the core philosophy is let's make mining easy. So you can go to honeyminer.com in about 10 seconds. You try it yourself. You go to honeyminer.com, you click Start Earning Now, and you will download this app, and that app will now start using your computer's CPU and GPU to earn you Bitcoin. And kind of how that works is that we will start mining with your GPU or CPU, Ethereum Classic, Zcash. We have about 15 or 20. I think in any given day, about 10 different algos get touched by our system. And so we mine what's most profitable. That's our key thing. We want to be most profitable mining software for our users. And then we'll pay you in Bitcoin. So it's a beautiful thing, I think.
It is beautiful, especially because it really drives home the ethos of permissionlessness. Permissionlessness? I have one word
I
in
like
an
that
episode where I don't know if it's a real word or not. But
It's
you're
a
driving
good word.
the permissionless ethos of Bitcoin. You can basically click a button, begin participating, begin basically earning Bitcoin. With the click of a button, you just give up your computing source. There's no KYC AML right now.
The way that I describe this is, to grandma or something, is like it's kind of like Airbnb for your computer. You're lending your computing resources, and in return we pay you. And we pay you in Bitcoin in this case, right? But that's more or less what's happening. You have a spare laptop, you have a gaming computer, or you're straight up a whale miner. It doesn't matter. If you're a miner, you can use our software. It's a one-click install, ready to go, and there you are. You're earning Bitcoin, and hopefully, we're making you more money than our competitors. That's what we're here to do.
Yeah, and your competitors are what, like NiceHash?
Yeah, more or less.
A couple others.
And what we've done a little bit different in this early first, this is our first version. We're pretty young, right? It's about ease of use. Mm-hmm. That's our focus, right?
UX is important.
That's right.
It's very important.
That's right.
I think your rhetoric, philosophy, background, and design experience is paying off.
Definitely.
That's one thing.
Ironically, huh?
Yeah. People, this is one thing, maybe going on a side tangent here. Is one thing. So I learned I was part of the Drupal community for a while.
Familiar.
Working with Drupal developers specifically, so backend PHP developers. And I was basically going to design shops and saying, hey, we've got these developers. Like, I know you're bidding for CMS.
You might have came through my email form Sunday.
I bet I did. But it's like there is a disconnect between designers and engineers that fascinates me. The fascination over this started in 2014 when I took this UX boot camp. Mm-hmm. It's design is underappreciated, I would say, especially UX design and the onboarding flow and the first 30-second interaction you have with a product is
working
imperative.
in software, it teaches you that there's a difference between a graphic designer and a product designer.
Exactly.
Because a product designer understands like engineering and how things work. It's the classic Steve Jobs, like it's how it works, right? Mm-hmm. It's like the experience is how it works, and designing, a flyer or a website is very different than designing an app, because there's so many layers and there's so much that can go on behind a simple user face, right? Honeyminer is a great example.
Yeah, and you can even get as general as designing this podcast, this experience that we're having right now. Like,
for sure,
the fact that we're drinking, we're in person, face to face, like
great experience. Nice studio. By the way. First time in a studio. I love it.
Could be better aesthetically, but I think the face to face interaction is important. But with that being said, back to Honeyminer. Like, how does it work under the hood? Like, what are you guys doing? What are your data sources? How are you figuring out which coin is most profitable to mine at which time? How are you sort of shifting hash power to that coin and then divvying out the rewards?
Yeah, no, this is a good opportunity actually to say, everything about Honeyminer we've built in house. It's like proprietary, right? So our objective, like I said, is to be the most profitable. And the way you do that is by having a very smart algorithm that figures out at this very moment, considering your GPU and your CPU, like on your computer sitting right here, what is most profitable? What algorithm is Ethereum or Ethereum Classic or whatever, right? So we try to make a really smart algorithm, and so far it's been very successful. And we're trying to figure out how can we continue to not only figure out what you have in your computer, which is a task in itself, right? Mm-hmm. But actually be able to mine what's most profitable. So that's really like, it's very complicated, but very simple at the same time. If you go to other websites out there, there's a few sources that you can look at, like different like profitability or what's the hash power of XYZ, like Ethereum Classic right before Coinbase got really hot. Mm-hmm. You get all this attention, this like gravitational poll on this topic, and then you'll see like hash power associated with it. So people start to speculate. Spec mining, if you're not familiar with the term, is like a huge part of the market that really goes underserved, and that we're creating this, and hint, we're working on some cool features coming up for spec miners that we're going to create an environment that it's going to fetch really quickly the most profitable and get that. And of course, right now it's just Bitcoin, another hint, but we're working on some pretty cool stuff that allows the user to not have to work too hard, where if you're a professional mining shop, if you're even just a hobbyist, you would have to invest development hours into creating software optimizations. There's tons of nerds out there that are just killing it in this game right now, right? And we're trying to bring that to the masses. So there's exploits. There's kind of like, it's not front running, it's not the right term, but you can start to like gather some intel.
It's data arbitrage.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well said. And that's the stuff that we're trying to introduce with algorithms. So you can imagine that it's a very simple user interface when you look at Honeyminer, but it's quite complex. But then it kind of like, it sounds funny, but it's that simple. We're targeting the most profitable, and we built a really smart way to do that.
It's incredible. No, it's an interesting way to get introduced to Bitcoin. Like, some people buy it first, other people are given to it, maybe for a different demographic of people. This is the most. This is the way in which they get into it, where they understand it, where they have an aha moment, where it's like, oh,
absolutely,
I understand this stuff.
Absolutely. When we launched a few months ago, we knew it was a cool idea, obviously. I mean, we're spending a lot of time, a lot of effort. Like, we built up this whole company around it. And when we pushed it out and we saw like people really, really like this and it's really useful. And then other stuff started coming. So we got a lot of good surface area with CoinDesk. They did a little feature on us and said, Honeyminer, you can earn Bitcoin with a laptop again. And that stuck really well. And even in fact, we underestimated how much traffic would hit us that day. And we actually got stuck on Google. And if you searched Bitcoin, we were the #1 news article for like 48 hours. So
hell yeah.
We got hit heavy. And, this is something that people are really interested in, is Bitcoin, but mining's kind of like, well, if you want Bitcoin, the easiest way to get it until now was to buy it. Now you can just turn on your computer and you can earn a couple cents, you could earn a couple dollars, you could earn hundreds or thousands of dollars depending on the scale. And we were talking about this a little bit earlier, is people now all over the world are participating in this. And we have even a special little group of people that wouldn't usually have access to Bitcoin, or maybe it was hard for them, or maybe they just don't have like available money, or banks and Coinbase and things like that aren't that accessible. So like 30% of our users are coming from places that are not like great places to live. Let's say like Africa and things like that. So we even like sending a T-shirt to a guy. I think he's in Nairobi, Kenya. I don't remember exactly what's country.
Nairobi's in Kenya.
So that sounds right.
Or Kenya's in
Nairobi, Kenya, I believe.
Show my ignorance here.
I believe
it's in Kenya. Yes.
So I think he's there in Kenya, or in Africa in general. So that was a really big moment for us, because not only were we building things that people are excited about, and it's a business, and it has a revenue model, and it makes people money too, which is really great part about building a product like this. It's not like a token, right? It's like, this makes you money. We don't ask you for any money. You just turn it on and you make money. And that was really powerful. So financial inclusion is a piece that you don't necessarily see right away. Even maybe we didn't recognize as big of a piece of this as it could be.
It was sort of a positive externality that happened from starting the company. I love it.
For sure.
So I guess let's dive into this. How do you guys maintain a profit? What do you
so our business model, if you have 2 GPUs or more, we take a 2.5% fee.
Okay.
And it's pretty simple. And, we make money when you make money. We don't ask for any money up front, or, of course not, right? It's a mining application. So and then that's proportional to how much hardware you have and what you're doing. So we hope that that's the way of the future. And at the moment, we're just really focused on building a great product.
Yeah, well, speaking of building a great product, you just brought on a great ad to the team today, I would say. So you tweet that you guys brought on Not So Fast, crypto Twitter OG, who's been I've been following it since 2013. He's one of the first people I followed in the space. He's an OG miner. He seems to know what he's doing, and he may be an altcoin degenerate, but he definitely knows his mining operations.
Yeah, he knows his stuff. So, yeah, Not So Fast just joined the team. We officially announced it about an hour ago as of today's recording. So as you listen to this, it's already official, and we'll be kind of pushing out some additional information with that. But it's pretty great to have him on the team. When we started working on Honeyminer, we always had Not So Fast in mind. And I work with crypto Randy Marsh as well, and we knew right away that Not So Fast was number one on the list. Mm-hmm. And we wanted to make sure that with the team that we got something out and that we were doing a good job, and we made sure that the product was stable and it was doing all the things that it should do, like we promised, right? And that happened pretty quickly, and so I went right for it, and we got in line with Not So Fast, and about a month later, here we are, and he's officially joined the team. So we're really hoping that he adds some value with kind of the product roadmap, helping us take on these big whale miners, and teaching us a few things. Really, he's a really smart guy outside of mining as well. So he's a great person to have around in a business setting.
Yeah, congrats, man. Huge get, in my opinion.
And Not So Fast, I hope you're listening. Shout out, man. You're killing it.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for this dude. And I guess we could jump into this. Like, he's well known for being, I'm a Bitcoin maximalist, but he's not fond of Bitcoin maximalist. And I guess let's talk about the role that altcoins and like altcoin mining plays in this whole thing, because I think there is a good argument to be made that Bitcoin is sustained because of this altcoin market, because of the speculation around it.
Well, yeah, because people want to earn more Bitcoin.
Exactly.
And this is one way to do it. So it's like a way to play the game. Excuse me. So I think one of the things about Bitcoin, I don't know, is Bitcoin generalist a word? Like, I'm kind of like
it is now.
Yeah, Bitcoin and all derivatives of it are great. And I think that as far as like the actual things that altcoins bring into play, and like especially Ethereum, is that it's developing human capital. And people are learning about Bitcoin, they're learning about blockchain, they're learning about smart contracts, they're learning how to move data on an immutable space, or arguably semi-immutable space.
Semi-immutable, I would say.
Yeah, we won't go into it. But the other cryptocurrencies, I think, are really important because you also see things like new algorithms, new ways to adjust block difficulty. I'm just learning about some of this stuff myself. You see, like, you look at Overstock and Medici, and they have now Ravencoin is kind of like they're putting some of their human capital on this project. And it's cool to see because it's like traditional businesses that are trying to understand what blockchain is. And it's, Ravencoin's a Bitcoin fork. So sounds great. Like, I would love for public companies to understand how to compute and develop and do whatever the heck they want on Bitcoin.
Yeah. And that's where, I'm trying to see where I can take this, because I would agree where I think the experimentation is key. But when you involve money in it, like, that's where I get a little hesitant.
Yeah, well, I think you have to understand that
retail money, when you involve retail money in it, that's where
sure, yeah. And Ethereum, I like, again, I'm not really like trying to come out and be this Bitcoin maximalist headstrong guy, but I built projects on Ethereum, and like there's like additional, it does take, like, I believe a net, like, it takes more resources to build something on Ethereum, and it has high entropy. It's like less of standardization and things like that, and that's all being worked on. Great, okay, cool. But it doesn't directly like contribute back to Bitcoin, which is kind of like the mother of the ship, right, of like crypto. And so your best bet, I think, would be to do things of Bitcoin's nature. But again, like, you're looking at, and I don't think we've seen it right now, but I would be willing to bet in the future some of these people that are working on Ethereum and other things are going to come back, and they maybe have this epiphany that people like us that were, oh yeah, Bitcoin. It's it. That's the Bitcoin is the one you want to have. Yeah. If you question that, then you should read about Bitcoin a bit more, right?
Yeah, and I guess that's what this whole discussion is about, is the EV positive or negative.
That's a hard one to go down to, right?
Exactly.
I mean, what do you think?
I go back and forth. I mean, I just wish all that energy was focused on building on top of Bitcoin, but at the same time, that might not be possible. You know?
Because perhaps the profit, once everybody accumulates the same strategy, like the margins of like error and profit, those are kind of equal, right? If there's more like volatility, there's more opportunity for loss and profit, and that's what these other volatile things allow for. And unfortunately, that's kind of the Darwinism. That's like our key topic tonight, I guess, is like there's some Darwinism associated where people have to lose to learn.
Well, exactly. And that's probably why I would argue it is positive EV in the end, because it's helping us learn quicker, and we're seeing it fail in the wild quicker.
I would love to know, though, if people own, maybe your first crypto was Ethereum. Does that mean that they own proportional Bitcoin? I would love to know that stat. It's hard to know. Just like you could talk to a few ETH and a few Bitcoin.
Even my most bullish ETH friends are majority Bitcoin holders.
That's good to know. Yeah. I mean, I hope that's the case for most.
I mean, it's a very anecdotal stat, but
sure.
Yeah, a lot of my most bullish ETH friends.
That's the only data we have, but that's what I like. Again, if people are listening and you're like Ethereum bullhead, please just get a little Bitcoin. Like I would suggest, if we're talking about trading, which I'm not really a trader and I'm not really trying to get into it.
Neither am I.
80% Bitcoin, that's a good move. If you're going to play that game, 80% Bitcoin, then play your games. Good luck, guys.
Yeah, exactly. I saw a tweet today. Try to accumulate at least one Bitcoin, and then you can screw around after that.
Oh, that's a good one.
I'll
have to dig that up on Twitter. That's a retweet.
Yeah, I forget who sent it out. It was a trader. It might have been Bitlord.
Okay, Bitlord. I like that.
The dude, was he part of the Romano ass eating excavate?
I don't know, but it seems like everybody was at this point. That was the prophecy was one of the most inside memes I've ever seen.
Is that why we're sitting at 73.50 right now?
I guess so, man.
For all you freaks that don't know out there, Romano is an OG. He's like 22 now?
Viacoin developer too? Young guy, but been around. Viacoin.
Yeah, so he basically picked up an old dead alt project. Developers abandoned it. He was 19 from the Netherlands, I believe, when he picked it up. And just been developing that, and he's a non-dev and is an incredible shit poster. And I guess it was like the beginning of the year. Or no, it's probably like spring or beginning of summer. People said the bear market wouldn't turn around until our boy Romano licked a butt, and he did that.
He licked a butt.
He licked a butt over the week or over the weekend.
Thank you, Romano.
Yeah. Hey, doing what you can to push it forward. But this is actually a good segue, because you're a man of memes, and this was somewhat of a meme in the space, dude.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
So let's talk about the power of memes. Like, how did you get, like, you are a believer that you can, and I am too. I'm a very big believer in this, and I would argue most people in cryptocurrency are, that you can will a thought into existence with a very good meme.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of research out there that says that. Like, you study different, like, powerful leaders in the past, right? So as funny as this sounds, like I'm trying to make memes serious, but they are very serious. They're, you look back in war times and propaganda, those are memes in themselves. They're translating or passing on information.
Uncle Sam's probably one of the most infamous memes.
Memes run the world in some sense. And, part of the reason I started this crypto Twitter thing, I'm like, it's only been around for a year or so, was that I felt that as myself, I was very boring, or people didn't really like to catch on to some of these things. And then as a meme, I could really put out humor and intellectual power and not be judged by the way you look. And that's kind of like a Twitter account's very special in that way. But if you look at posters, you look at, Instagram is like loaded with memes. It's a lot of like inspiration comes from there. Mm-hmm. These are communication channels. This, you study information theory, or if you study communication theory, you study art. You're portraying messages in a very condensed format. So memes are a pretty powerful thing. And of course we have fun doing it. But many times you may not realize that a meme could influence the way you think far, far beyond the moment that you just like take that meme in, right?
Yeah. I mean, biggest example of that is our president right now. Make America Great Again.
Yeah, sure.
One of the most powerful memes of this century.
Absolutely. And the entertainment value in that case. And and you could say, there's intellectual values, there's entertainment value. Memes allow for you to convey one, the other, both. Depends on obviously the setting and like kind of the art format of it. And I've even experienced with, or experimented with memes. I talked to Crypto Randy Marsh. He and I like to talk about this theory, like meme theory. I joke that I studied meme theory in college. and thank you, Purdue. And I like part of it is being able to like convey messages and make jokes, and then also be serious. And there's a lot of layers to how memes work, and I think that more and more of the way we communicate will be through a picture and multimedia than it will be through text. And that's what I really like that concept.
All right. We're getting drunker here. Let's get trippier. It's like
right.
hieroglyphs, right? Like what? Maybe hieroglyphs were a more sophisticated type language.
Well, if you're familiar with like Pepe Cash or Pepe Dap, which is basically a Pepe Cash on Ethereum, and it's something that I worked on myself. And the idea was like, how can we build a place where people can basically artists can submit memes, and there can be a marketplace for them in a finite supply associated. And this is a little bit beyond memes. Like think about music, video, all formats. These things now, because of, believe it or not, Bitcoin or Ethereum, in this case, we build it on Ethereum, allows you to have a longer shelf life, and you can timestamp ownership and things like that of art creation. So I think it's a pretty fantastic thing that like memes are only being intensified by things like blockchain.
Yeah.
Really. And we're seeing it with
How so?
Romano or whatever. It's on a whole new level now.
Because, I think it's a combination of blockchains and then the mediums through which, the media through which we can express these memes. Like the internet, it's like the 4chan and the forums of the early 2000s and mid 2010s or whatever. I don't even know how to talk about that. The tens. How would you even describe that decade?
Yeah, I think 4chan, Reddit, great examples of these are more or less like decentralized communities, at least before Bitcoin and Ethereum exists.
Yeah, that. And what I'm trying to say though, it's sort of crescendoing right now, where everybody's sort of getting on board with oh, this is actually very powerful.
Even my dad sends me memes,
right?
Have you ever experienced that, where I'm getting these funny puppy memes or whatever?
It's like the emoji culture and texting and stuff like that. That's getting more popular. And
absolutely.
And, how's it going to affect the way we communicate? It already is. How parabolic is it going to get of how it affects?
I think we're just kind of hitting that we're just at the bottom of the chart, let's say, as far as the way we'll communicate in the future will be less about your native language and more about just translating, kind of abstracting, fractal. You can use all these funny words, but it's metaphors. The core of all language is metaphor. So
a book recommended to me by Bitcoin core developer, The Glass Bead Game by Herman Hesse. He wrote it in the 1930s, but it really gets into the essence of this. It's people explaining emotions and conveying emotions with music and body movement and stuff like that.
And if you want to get super nerdy, in the weeds, mathematician, computer science style, Gödel, Escher, Bach, or I think that's the right way, but there's a lot more out there that these are you're looking at things like numbers, and then somehow you end up in the meaning of life or memes, and all of this is abstractions of numbers, data. You look at hieroglyphics and kind of the translation of them. I was just talking about this with a few friends. I can only read 20% of the literature that exists in the world because it's either in Latin or Arabic or whatever. And all of this stuff is yes, this is related to memes, everybody. These are root languages, right? And now all of a sudden we went from Latin and hieroglyphics and Arabic to we have kissy face emojis. Mm-hmm. This is very much the same thing, whether you like that or not, and that's how we will communicate with each other. And it'll eventually kind of unify language in a sense where, we're not going to have the same rich conversation if you're from X country and I'm from Y and we speak two different languages. But the mimetic of it, if I shall, will allow us to communicate better than we do today.
Allowed. And it's interesting how quickly it's happening. Again, I'm harping on this, but I'm trying to figure out, because there's something there. It's memes are trying to, because at the end of the day, what does a meme do? It tries to convey a very long-winded argument in a very simple picture, and it's almost like the universe trying to discover itself. I don't want to get too cheesy, but like trying to push us further and further to like, what are we made of? And
a meme is like condensed data, right? It's a single picture that can have 1,000 words, and that's an old saying. You know, Grandma told me that saying, and that saying probably existed before Grandma. That's a meme. And now we have like technology that at our fingertips, we can make one. We could take a screenshot, we can put text over it, and we can communicate. We can add an emoji. We can Snapchat things. We can do all that fun stuff with video editing. And it takes 30 seconds to create this experience that communicates things to you, right? And that's really important if whether you're like into Bitcoin or whether you're into information theory or whatever you're into, it's like part of this is a culture like growing up in a way. And yes, memes are very immature, but we're growing up and starting to conform language that allows us to pass things on.
Like, have we just been framed to this mental box of thinking they're immature? Like, yeah, I like being immature. I think there's
good point. I mean, like, you know, Reddit, Barstool Sports, whatever, you know, the Chive, right? They were able to create businesses out of being like having fun with it. But like I said, I think you look back, and I had the opportunity to go to, I was in the Vatican, and there's a lot of Egyptian, you know, back in the day, the Romans went out to Alexandria and just wrecked the place, right? Mm-hmm. They brought back all this stuff, and it's like you look at it, and all of a sudden, you kind of have this funny thing where you don't really like, you know, I'm not going to tell my girlfriend next to me, but this thought, I'm like, that looks like a meme, you know, like this is a symbol in stone. This is actually like a way people communicated. And it's not that far away from that photo my buddy just sent me that made me laugh.
Well, let's stick on Egypt and stick on the heady topics here. But like, I dive deep into some of the Egypt theories, and one of my favorites is that Egypt is a lot older, or the Great Pyramids and the obelisk and the Great Sphinx are a lot older than a lot of people think. And maybe there was an advanced civilization like 45,000 years ago that had attained a level maybe beyond where we are now as a human civilization. You're nodding your head, so I think we can dive into this.
I love it. So I think this Bitcoin is very related to this. So yeah, if you know anything about history, I studied a little bit of that at college as well. You know that the famous thing is the Library of Alexandria got wrecked. It got burnt down, destroyed by the Romans, I believe.
The color of the Nile turned black because of all the ink that was in the water.
Done. So we lost like all of at that point, like this civilization had built up all this like intellectual equity, if you will, and it's gone. And actually you can put that back in format and say, well, thanks to Satoshi, we have immutable history books. We have a library that can never be burned, right? And this stuff is really, really fun for me to think about. And you can even go as far as like mentioning Mark Wilcox and DeSantis, Urban Arson. These are some guys on Twitter that have fun with this stuff. They mentioned, you know, well, what were the pyramids for? Well, whether you want to think the UFO aliens came and dropped down or not, you do have to respect that the advancement of like building these pyramids was really big at the time. And one thing that I started to think about as I look back on Bitcoin, history, you name it, is that, well, why were they built? And part of it that I found very interesting was like they built these things above ground, but within them was really what was key.
They certainly weren't tombs.
They had all these like secret places to store information. They had within the walls of the pyramid, they wrote on the walls. What did they write? Like events that happened in history, how to, you know, certain medicine recipes, and how to embalm bodies. Like, you know, we're getting really Joe Rogan here, right? Like we're talking about some fun stuff, but this is true. And so I always talk about the pyramids if I am talking about the pyramids, rather, that the pyramids looked great, but it was all about what's within them. You know, it's all about those passageways with them. And in some sense, you could have really a fun, and it's a little bit of a stretch, but you could say it's a blockchain. It's a place that stored data, and that it was pretty dang immutable, because guess what? It still exists today. Even those bodies in there still exist today, right?
Well, apparently there weren't bodies in there. Apparently there was no tombs in the Great Pyramids, at least in Giza.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently there was no tombs. Like they were. You got to watch the Pyramid Code on Netflix.
I'm so in.
But apparently there wasn't a tomb there. And then I mean, we're getting complete like History Channel ancient aliens right now. This is all conjecture. But if you look at a picture of Giza and the Great Pyramids from above Earth, it looks a lot like a chip, like the master board of a chip, like the way the pyramids are set up and the mini pyramids around them.
You're definitely giving me something to look into. This podcast. This is great.
Our boy T-Mac at _ T3 or TM3K on Twitter. He's crazy. He's big into conspiracy theories, but I like to not appease them, but like I like to know what's going on with them. You know?
Yeah, sure.
And this is an interesting one. And there's a good theory that I like to not play around with, but I like to appease, which is that the Great Pyramids are a lot older. They're not 7,000 years old. They're 46,000 years old. And the Great Flood story was actually did happen, and it basically wiped out human civilization here in the West, in the East, in Egypt, and the Great Pyramids are one of the few last standing artifacts.
Yeah, well, like it's not directly, it is directly, I guess, related, but you look at the store of information that was associated with things in Egypt or in really, really old civilizations. You know, we can hop off the pyramids. Some people are not interested, right? We can talk about anything in the world. Mm-hmm. If you go to Italy and Pompeii or whatever, and you see I had the chance to do that, see people engulfed in ashes and their stone, but you still see the art, you still the writing. All of this is information that's been stored, and it's like low entropy. It's lasted for a really, really long time. And we're talking about history, but in a sense, it repeats itself. It's kind of this strange loop of coming back, and we talk about Bitcoin, and it's so funny that this stuff like memes, history, economics, philosophy, and Bitcoin just continue to cycle around because Bitcoin, like I said, Bitcoin can be a place that we store our books. Why are we not doing that? I have a tweet that did pretty well on Twitter that said, imagine if Jack had the guts to put Twitter on the blockchain. Imagine if all the things you thought you could put in a place that could stay there forever. And you could be wrong. And you could look back in retrospect in that very free flow of consciousness and say, I was wrong. Mm-hmm. And it's there. And you can see everybody else who's wrong. And you can see everybody else who is right. Be a pretty powerful thing.
It would definitely be pretty powerful. But is it possible right now? Like, would that be too much of a data burden? Like, how would you have to use like OTS proof bot on every tweet, or like how would you do this?
I actually do that pretty often. Yeah. I have a lot of fun kind of creating. I told a friend of mine that I'm treating Twitter right now as like my own personal predictive market, where I'm like going in there and I'll say, oh yeah, Tesla goes up, Tesla goes down, Twitter goes up, goes down, whatever, and then I'll go in there and proof bot that thing and stamp it on Bitcoin. So even if likelihood of Twitter dying isn't very high, but if it did, I still have a place where I can go check where I marked this tweet and say, hey, haha, I told you Twitter was the future. That stock's going to moon, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think if you're going to put it on Bitcoin, it is possible. Again, it's that a lot of people don't focus on that as being a problem. A lot of people want to build their cool ideas. They want to issue some tokens as receipts for donations and say, I'm going to build my really idea. Thank you for cool idea. Thank you for giving me your money. And I'm going to go off and do that. And they do that because Ethereum had this environment that allowed you to easily gather investment. It's Kickstarter 2.0, right? So at the moment, there's like not a great incentive model for people to start to do more and more on Bitcoin. And again, I think that starts to come over time as losses happen. People learn by losing.
What would you say about like the cost and storage of running a full node coming into play? Because I think that's why a lot of people are perturbed with Ethereum in particular, because it's very hard to spin up an Ethereum node right now. And that is sort of like, again, the trade-offs of what we can do with these blockchains. You sort of have to play within the laws of data storage. And so that's like the big question I have. And I don't know, like,
so I'm not let's say I'm not a pro at like some of these, like, let's call it like estimated attack costs and how much does it cost to maintain a node and data. But I do a lot of this stuff. And even with Bitcoin, it makes me laugh sometimes when people are like, well, we need Lightning because big blocks. Yeah, Lightning's dope. Like, let's do it. I just ordered a Casa Lightning node today. Like, I'm down, right? Like, I'm open to all this. I'm for all building. But it's really not that big of a deal. And if you do your research and you look at things like Nereid storage solutions and like No More RAID, like, well, now you can imagine our home computers are going to be able to host a lot of data. They're going to be able to render it really fast. You're going to run your 4Ks and like, whatever, right? You're going to have these really great solutions. And so all of a sudden, like block size isn't that big of a deal. Now, yes, people don't see that, right? Because you're only seeing what's like propagated on Twitter and the news and Reddit and all of that as problems that might exist. But the cost of operating these things, yes, there is like kind of the bottom of the barrel that can't afford to do this, but general people with like a home PC can do most of these things. Mm-hmm. And I would love to see the math to back it up. And if there's like any like, fact checkers out there listening, I really do genuinely like to learn more about like, what does it cost to maintain this stuff, right? But I'm doing a lot of this and I can't say I'm doing it in a scientific method where I'm like measuring the costs and stuff, but I'm no Bill Gates billionaire either, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of people can still access that, and I'm not as concerned about that. But that's something that I'm continuing to learn more about. And again, I think that if you want to contribute to Bitcoin, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, and XYZ, just do it. And let's stop complaining about all the things that could go wrong, and let's like make them go wrong. Because the solutions will arise from that, right?
See, yeah, no, that's what I'm a big fan of. Is like, all right, if this shit's gonna fall on its face, like let's do it ASAP.
Let's wreck it.
Yeah.
Let's stress test everything, and the best way to stress test is start paying with Bitcoin. Start buying your stuff with Bitcoin. If I've already figured this out myself. Oh well, Square just allowed you to withdraw on their app, so I just saw somebody like Jackson Palmer. He's on a witch hunt these days, trying to wreck everything on Twitter, and I'm like, he's talking about Robinhood, and then he brought up Square, and I was like, actually, man, you're a little bit on a witch hunt here. Square lets you withdraw. You can go and get a Square card in the mail.
Square. Hey, this is the 5th free Square Cash App read on this pod. All right, Jack, I hope you're listening.
Call us.
It's my favorite app. I've used it twice today. I got 17% off Whole Foods today because I'm a Prime member and I use the Cash Card Boost at Whole Foods. Damn. 17% off just for that, for doing nothing.
Noted. I'm writing that down.
Write that down. Like, you get 10% off if you're a Prime member, and then I use my Cash App to pay with the Whole Foods Boost on, and I got 17% off.
Wow.
A $15 lunch almost $14 lunch turned into like $11.
That's a Brooklyn price. The Brooklyn price is pretty high.
Brooklyn price, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you still in Indiana?
Yeah, I bounce back and forth. I'm spending a lot of time in Berlin at the moment.
Boss.
Yeah. Really
I like that. What's good in Berlin?
A lot of blockchain stuff, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Great cost of living. My lunch doesn't cost $15, and just a little bit of life adventure, learning and experiencing some stuff. So, but and to your point about Square, by the way, like that's a great opportunity for people who. It's also a very noob friendly thing, like Honeyminer, where you can get some Bitcoin, you can withdraw it. It's there.
Oh.
You can spend Bitcoin that way. To my point is like you can buy things with Bitcoin.
The liquidation process is impeccable in Cash App. The way they set up they have ACH access to your bank account, so you can add cash on the weekend to your Cash App from your bank account, and it'll be like a debit card transaction. Mm-hmm. You can add cash to your bank account from your Cash App, and it'll happen right away, like a debit card transaction.
That's cool. Like, can you do recurring buys? Like dollar
you can do. They have recurring buys. They have recurring buys. They have everything. You can liquidate Bitcoin right away into cash, send it to your bank account, have cash right away if you need to. Like, it is a seamless UX. Go out there, try the Cash App. We're gonna beta test this. For anybody that works at the Cash App that's listening to this, I'd like my promo code to be Crypt, CRYPT, in the future.
Good move.
Just so you know.
Yeah, and it's like, dude, that's the best way. If you want to make a difference, try to find ways to spend your Bitcoin. It's like, yeah, okay, we don't want to just like blow. Yeah, sure. Everybody listen, we want you to hold your Bitcoin too. Yes, we hope it moons. Blah, blah,
Spend
blah.
and replenish.
Spend, replenish, dollar cost average, make it a part of your economic cycle and day-to-day life. That's how you can make Bitcoin make a difference. That's how we can stress test it. We can do things. Now, Cash App doesn't directly do that, but it gets you on a nice path to doing that. And then guess what? You can start to talk with your local suppliers. Like, you got your coffee shop. I know I used to do this a lot, and it wasn't always a success. And in a rare occasion it was, where I would go to the local shop and say, hey, I like to spend in Bitcoin. and I would pay a premium in Bitcoin. I pay 1% more or whatever. It could be very small, but it's more. And guess what? Every time you use your credit card, it costs your vendor 3.75%. So when you do that, that cost isn't, the vendor doesn't take that cost, by the way, everybody. You as the consumer realize that cost. So now everything is $350 instead of $275 or whatever the heck that math adds up to.
Yeah. No, and that's one thing. You can do this on the Cash App, just so you know. So I bought that Casa Hodl, or just Casa, excuse me.
It's Casa Lightning.
It's their
Bitcoin and
it's
Lightning.
Plug and play Lightning and Bitcoin full node. But yeah, I bought it. I withdrew from the Cash App to the BTC Pay server that they had, and it was seamless. Just scanned a QR code right from the app, and I'll have some sovereignty tools headed my way in about a month and a half.
Yeah, and I've been recommending Cash App a lot more lately because they did Bitcoin. So again, Jack, we're talking about him right now. He is killing the game, I think.
So, and I think the ethos of what you're doing at Honeyminer with inclusion and stuff really is parallels what they're doing at Cash App, because at Cash App they're trying to help. This is something that's just a fact of the way the app was adopted. It's just so happened to happen in the inner cities first and became popular on Black Twitter and really blew up in the inner city community. And Jack noticed that, and he was like, all right, I'm going to help these people out, and create the Boost program, which is like $1 off coffee every day, 10% off Whole Foods, 15% off Chick-fil-A. They just added Domino's, Panera, a bunch of other ones over the weekend. And they're really just trying to help people that use their app be more financially stable, and by creating this incentive program.
Yeah, if I may, I'm gonna pull a slight tangent with Jack, is that he not only is he doing Square, I think people forget this. Right now it's a big deal to talk about Twitter and political parties getting banned, or Alex Jones getting banned, or whatever. Listen, I default to free speech. Let's let it win. But Jack is killing the game. And by the way, he's back at Twitter. And the only other person I can recall in my young, fragile life is that Steve Jobs is the only other person that had gotten, let's say, maybe Jack didn't get booted per se, but he made his way out, and he came back. And what happened?
Apple and then NXT or Next, right?
And yeah, right.
And back to
so he went Apple and NXT, and then came back, and then we can talk about some really fun stuff. So he did that. He comes back. Steve Jobs comes back to Apple. Well, they're not in a great situation because they hired this PepsiCo Chad, bro, and he really screwed things up. He's all about sales, less about product. Classic.
The bomber of Apple.
So he wrecks the place. Guess who saves the day? Bill Gates. So we're gonna have fun now.
With an investment, right?
He dropped mad cash. I couldn't tell you the amount offhand. So what happens next? The iPhone. Oh, cool. Sweet. Well, then what happens after the iPhone? The App Store. And then we have now public companies, or I call them user interfaces, like Twitter and Snapchat. But let's focus on Twitter. So Twitter comes around. And so because of Bill Gates, we've created Twitter. Thanks, Jack. You should say thank you. And let's have even more fun. So where did Satoshi originally build Bitcoin? What operating system? I'm quizzing you right now, Marty.
What operating system? I'm not sure. It was
Windows.
Windows, was it? Oh, yeah, it was a Windows client.
So wow, isn't that kind of funny, huh? A little bit of a loop there. If it wasn't for Bill Gates, we wouldn't have a lot of things. We wouldn't have Bitcoin. We wouldn't have Twitter. We wouldn't have the iPhone, which allows us to send our Bitcoin and allows us to do our tweets. It allows us to send our nudes on Snapchat. It allows us to buy things with Bitcoin or cash using Square, and all of this fun stuff. That shit is heavy, my friend.
Talk about primitives. Primitives is a big meme going around right now. Talking about foundational primitives. And then on top of that, Bill Gates, maybe malaria would be a worse issue in the world if what he did with all that money he made from building that stuff wasn't targeted towards. That's his cause now, right? Is malaria and Africa.
Yeah, and he's going much more the humanitarian route, right?
Yeah.
Which is great. Sure, that's all good. And I think that when you're in that position of such success, you have the right to basically try anything and everything you want, right?
Yeah. And so there's these software, hardware, and firmware technological sort of foundations that our world is built on now because of people like Jobs and Gates.
Oh yeah, I mean we can
Andy
really
Grove
get into it.
And,
Everything's a superposition of Bezos, Gates, Sergey, and so Google, Amazon, Microsoft. These are all like, so every product you use, and again, like I was making a little bit of a joke, but it's very, very true, is that these user interfaces that are public companies, I think Snapchat's worth like 14 billion. It's literally a camera app. It's a user interface. I have personally, with a few friends, built a few Snapchat-like things before Snapchat was a public company. And you look at these and you're like, well, these are all superpositions of these massive data houses, Microsoft and Google and Amazon. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, right? But
is it? I think it might be, though.
Well, it's what it is. We wouldn't be here today. Like I said, Bitcoin wouldn't exist if like Microsoft didn't do its thing.
Well, I guess that's the big question, though. Do we need to keep Microsoft and these incumbents in check and sort of like the block stacks of the world and stuff like that?
You know, the best thing you could do is if you really want to change the world, is try to kill your king. And that's essentially what Satoshi did. Not directly, I don't think, but he came out. I think
it was pretty directly. He embedded it in the Genesis block.
We all thought about the banks, right? But what's really funny is you look at Bitcoin, you think it's just money after the banks. But now it's, guess what? There's Microsoft, there's Google, there's Amazon, and there's Bitcoin. This place to store your data. And everyone wants to talk about how expensive it is because they measure their Bitcoin in US dollar. But to me, I measure my Bitcoin in Bitcoin. So I can spend a few Satoshis and store my data on a place that no one could ever take away. So now the beauty of making memes and like Pepe Dap on Ethereum or Bitcoin or whatever, you name it, is that you have an immutable space where this data outlasts the website that hosts it. Mm-hmm. So when these websites die one day, there's still access. Somebody else can build another website on top of these smart contracts or layers or data. Let's just call it data.
The hunting cave paintings from France are on the Bitcoin blockchain.
They still live.
That's what they are.
And then we can build abstractions and paint new paintings that look similar but better or whatever we want. But they're still there to pass on this information that we need, these primitives that allow us to like actually abstract and do more, right?
And that's, so let's get trippier here. That's like my first conversation I ever had with DeSantis in person, with Andrew DeSantis in person. He basically described to me that we could send the Bitcoin blockchain into space with radio waves, and it could potentially, this is within the laws of physics, to hit another planet. Maybe it has intelligent life on it, and if they're smart enough, they can decode those radio waves and learn about life on Earth via the Bitcoin blockchain. And stuff like that.
I hope people are laughing right now because as funny as this stuff is, it is true. Bitcoin. I just came into town and swooped up a few buddies of mine, and these are smart people. And I was having a good time, and I said, "All right, guys, this is a little bit of like out there, but let's talk about time." And then I started talking about. I tweeted this not too long ago. I'm like, well, I was kind of sitting there one day meditating or whatever. I was just idle thinking, which I think is the biggest power man has, by the way. And I started thinking about, well, Bitcoin is a way, like as in block numbers, you can now reference these places across space. So if you like search on Twitter, like Coinyeezy or from Coinyeezy space clock, I think from Coinyeezy space clock, you can find that. And the idea though is that now, because time is like this human-made process, and then you start to even get into the nitty-gritty, read the white paper, and you talk about like timestamp proofs, and that's Bitcoin. Whoa, I mean, I'd read this before, but I didn't really like. All of a sudden in 2018, it hit me.
We're staying on DeSantis here, but he has the best definition of Bitcoin in under 10 words out there. It's a timestamping protocol that, when implemented correct, or distributed timestamping protocol that, when implemented correctly, evolves into a stored value.
Yeah, sure. Because it's like Amber, a good friend of mine gave me this too. And back in the day, I was talking to a Rotary Club, and it's a bunch of old guys and women or whatever, and they're sitting there. And they don't know anything about Bitcoin, and I was pretty much a noob myself. And I said, Bitcoin and storing data is kind of like a bug stuck in amber. right? And that metaphor I think is really good especially for new people that are kind of capturing the idea of like the ledger.
It's very good because it gets stronger over time. And this is what Laurent PM from France, he runs oxt.me. He just released a paper. Basically, he actually just released part 2. I haven't read it yet, of a 4-part series of why POW is good and how traditional economists and even Bitcoiners and people in cryptocurrency space have been measuring the cost of POW mining incorrectly because they're not taking the amount of energy it took to stamp a UTXO into the blockchain at a certain point in time compared to how easy it is to stamp that into the blockchain in present day.
Mm-hmm.
And then
it's relative, right? Like there's
it's very relative.
change
Like
there.
what could have taken 50 exahash a couple of weeks ago now takes 62 exahash to mine into the blockchain.
Mm-hmm.
And so as each UTXO that isn't moved stays further and further into the blockchain, as more blocks get mined, it is like Amber, where like you have layers and layers of security getting built on this
the present
bug.
makes the past more real. Or
So the
stronger,
UTXO would
whatever.
be the bug in this analogy, right?
Yeah, sure, definitely. And like, you think about it as a clock, you can think about it as like a mutable library. You can go so many different directions. Another thing that a good analogy is or a metaphor is like, well, proof of work is like a lifetime warranty on your data or money or whatever you want to view Bitcoin as. Again, I have there's many definitions of Bitcoin. And I who are the guys that wrote? It's like Adam Tash. I hope I'm saying his
And
last
Murad,
name.
yeah.
And
Many Faces of Bitcoin they wrote.
Oh, wonderful. So Many Faces of Bitcoin on Medium. Please read that. It's really, really good content.
Adam Taché. I still don't know how to pronounce it, Adam. I'll get it right one of these days.
You need to be on this podcast, Adam.
Murad Mamedov. Adam's going to come on. I've talked to Adam.
Good.
Next time he's in New York. He's busy. He's a busy kid. That's the other thing that makes me very optimistic about this space is the amount of young people that are so enthralled with it. Like Murad and Adam are 23 and 20 years old or 21 years old, respectively, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And they're putting out content like that, which is...
I
think that was one of the best pieces written this year.
It's mind-blowing.
Right?
You read this, again, with Many Faces of Bitcoin on Medium. Please read it. And you start to get into this idea of like, well, it's money, it's store value. You start learning about Nash equilibrium and game theory, and you could go choose your path, choose your rabbit hole. But the special thing you learn now, though, is that Bitcoin is not just money. It can be other things. Now, if you want it to be just money and store of value or whatever, it can be that. That's fine. It's good for you.
And yeah, and I would agree with that. And I would say I trend more towards that definition that you just described. And it's going back to what we were saying earlier. It's like, yes, see all these ideas out to their, like, play them out in your mind. Like, go through the logical, play like the logical games, like the logical stories that people do. And feel it all out, and then decide for yourself what really resonates with you, what makes the most sense to you.
Definitely.
But just know that there's multiple options out there.
Definitely. And if you're on Twitter, use Twitter as a tool to like gather some of these new ideas. It's a great place to get a jump.
Twitter is the best communication tool that's ever been created in this world. If you know how to use List and TweetDeck on Twitter, you have a data advantage above most of the world that people don't even realize yet.
Fact.
You are literally plugged into, like, this is, you guys can't see it, but me and Coinyeezy are looking at my TweetDeck right now, and it is a small, like I can see this evolving into what Tank and his brother are looking at in the Matrix when, like, they're, like, watching them in the Matrix, and it's just, like, green data, green integers falling down the screen. Like, that's sort of what a TweetDeck looks like at, like, a very primitive form.
I think that Twitter right now, when you look at like solutions from like an information perspective, Twitter is one of the more bullish scenarios because you're looking at like, instead of a top down, it's like a bottom up. You can imagine, if you want to have fun, you can imagine putting Bitcoin underneath Twitter. You could do so many things. You can build clients on top of Twitter to make the interface more fun. Or I've got a few ideas actually myself that hopefully I can bring to life that are associated with Twitter clients, just like TweetDeck and other things, right? But there's a lot to go on. And again, we'll just give more credit to Andrew DeSantis where it's due, is that he, in the brief conversations that I've had with him, he kind of taught me these there's opportunities for like hacks of information and using Twitter search. Like I strongly encourage everyone to understand how to use Twitter search effectively.
Yeah, like I just messed up there. You're like from colon. You're like,
Yeah.
I'm not putting from in front of it.
That's right. And,
Yeah.
and you can do things like where it's like since and until, so you can look at dates. So I had fun one day and I looked at Bitcoin, the very first Bitcoin tweet, and
Hal Finney, right?
Oh no, yes.
Running Bitcoin.
And then there was and then about 2011 it started like getting socially on Twitter, at least specifically, it started getting more prominent, and it was cool. So I tweeted like, I'm looking at Bitcoin in 2011, and then I retweeted kind of in sequence the beginning, and from like the beginning of 2011 to the end, kind of the coolest tweets that I saw as I went through that. And everybody can do that, by the way, guys. So like, if it doesn't have to be on the blockchain to actually, you can go back in time in a sense and look at information and data. And Twitter allows you to do that because it's bottom up. When I say that, I mean like go try searching on Facebook, go try searching on these other platforms. You're not going to find it. And the best part about Twitter isn't like Google where it's all like done for you, let's say. Twitter allows you to cipher through all of this stuff and like, you know, pick out what you want.
You can be very specific.
You can be very specific or you can be very vague. And so I'm very bullish on the scenario with Twitter. You know, I'm not saying invest in it, but I personally would like to invest more in Twitter. I think it's a product that I use so much myself, and I see that there's so many intellectuals, even like you. You know, I'm talking to a smart person right now on this podcast, and it's because of Twitter. We met through Twitter,
yeah, and
then we met in real life there at the Chicago event, Voice of Blockchain, and we had this connection that went from digital to physical, and that's because of Twitter. And all these intellectual people are coming through Twitter, and they're hanging out. Naval is talking to people like me and my buddy Crypto Randy Marsh, and we're able to like ask him questions about philosophy, about our product, and this is one of the most prominent. He invented AngelList or created it, and
yeah, AngelList, now Coinlist as well, and
yeah, right.
But that's the other thing. It's like Twitter is like an even playing field if what you're saying is valuable. If somebody sees reciprocal value in the information you're giving out, they'll interact with you. And that's why I love having Anons on. Like, you're a fucking frog. Elon Moist on Twitter.
Shout
out Elon Moist at Coinyeezy. But like you, and that was actually a big debate a couple weeks ago. Somebody was like, if you're anonymous on this site, it's like you're a coward, but that's not true at all.
Have you ever heard of Satoshi?
Have you heard of Satoshi? Anyone? Not even that. Have you heard of the Federalist Papers? Like, when we started this country, like Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, John Adams, I believe, wrote under the pseudonym the Federalist Papers. Like, I forget exactly what pseudonym they used, but they were three of the founding fathers wrote anonymously to meme the thought of the U.S. into existence. Like, this is something that's been going on for centuries. And to think that an anonymous Kermit the Frog character on Twitter, just because he's anonymous, what he says like has no value is idiotic, and history has proven that throughout time.
And I'm trying to prove that myself, and you know, again, I'm there having fun, but I'm trying to network. I'm trying to work with people. I'm trying to build a platform when I create stuff that I can get really raw, honest feedback that helps me be better at being a product creator. That helps me be better at being a human. There's been things that I've said that were wrong on Twitter, and I can reference them. So it's like, you know, I might use Twitter a little different than the average person, where like I'm documenting like stream of thought, and I'm looking at this as an opportunity to kind of reflect as well. So when I tweet today, it's probably going to be wrong. I mean, stats say, just like a startup, you know, most of these things fail. Most of the things you think today are going to play out to be wrong. Maybe they are very righteous in thought, and you hope to be right, and maybe a lot of people hope that you're right. But Twitter's kind of this cool place that you can document that, and you can be wrong. And I'm really, really like that. I really like that.
I think the one thing you freaks will be surprised about is that people are okay if others are wrong on Twitter. Yes, you'll get called out, but it's expected. It's a very raw intellectual forum. I love it. If you want to if you freaks out there want to get inundated with crypto Twitter in particular, I have a list titled Crypto you can find on my profile. It's public. You can follow it. But that's where I get most of my information in this space. You're on the list.
I love it.
A lot of people are on the list. Your time is precious. You have to be somewhere in 33 minutes.
That's right.
What's the shot clock here?
Shot clock, we got a few more. I'd like to take a moment here to give a few shout outs, though.
Yeah.
Mom, dad, brothers, sisters, all those that love me. I do it for you. And I usually my family and friends, I'll push the stuff I do, and they do a good job of following and supporting me and giving me feedback. So I always like to show some love. And I got a lot of friends on Twitter, and people like Crypto Randy Marsh are a big reason why I'm able to kind of propel into new ideas, because they support me and they're talented in their own ways. Marty, I got to give you a shout out. Tales of the Crypt. It is one of the quality over quantity podcasts in a saturated market, people. So you guys got to help market this thing. Like, if you see this tweet go out, Tales of the Crypt with Coinyeezy, make sure you're retweeting that and liking that and sharing that with some friends, because not only are we very interesting people, as you can tell through these rabbit hole scenarios we just went through, but we're working really hard. And I really appreciate people out there that are going out, having fun, but also like trying to get some cool intellectual content out in the world.
I'm humbled. It's a very, very high praise coming from you. And I want to reciprocate the praise. I think what you're doing to introduce people to Bitcoin and then cryptocurrency in general via Honeyminer and all the projects you've been working on. Like I said, this man, Coinyeezy, content, he's got a content site and whale reports, portfolio app and Coindex, non-fungible token in PepeDApp, and now he's helping people earn Bitcoin by using their extra CPU or GPU space on Honeyminer. These are very important things. Thank you.
Yeah, and Honeyminer, just to be clear, honeyminer.com. It takes you maybe 15 seconds. We've had reviews out there that say that my grandma was able to do this. Please check it out. Talk to me on Twitter. You got questions, comments, concerns, reach out to me. I try to do my best to keep up with everything. And I hope to hear from you. And I hope that people out there can find joy from using these products. And I hope they can earn some Bitcoin and get some skin in the game, because that's what we're trying to do.
Fuck yeah. I hope I didn't get too drunk for you. I was slurring towards the end.
Nah, it was good.
All right.
It's fun.
Well,
we're up in the studio here. This is the first time. Like I said, I'm trying to have a good time too.
Did you have fun?
Hell yeah.
I had fun. You've got somewhere to be. That was all. Peace and love, freaks.
Thanks, everyone.
That's fun, dude.
That was great.